Dr. Carson, coming back to the intolerance of tolerance issue, I've become more discouraged and perplexed about how to live in this world of new tolerance, in part because Christians don't even get a seat at the table, aren't even given the opportunity to make their case. There's such intolerance, and it seems that reason is not allowed to even play a role. So how do Christians move forward in that kind of environment? And do you see this new hard intolerance collapsing upon itself eventually? Will we see the pendulum swing back, or will we just keep going deeper and deeper?
Well, those are two questions as well. I'll take the second one.
I like to do two in one.
Take the second question first. Eventually it will collapse on itself. I mean, whether it's long-term or short-term, there could be a pendulum swing reaction against it. This is just too silly by half. Or it might be that we'll suffer a disastrous war, which makes people suddenly start thinking in absolutes, not always in wise or godly ways, but it does force people to think in absolutes pretty quickly once they get involved in something like that. And so I can imagine half a dozen scenarios in which the thing will. In fact, you're seeing some of it now already. You're seeing some secular commentators beginning to laugh at the stupidities of correct speech on campuses and things like that. Recent articles in the Atlantic Monthly and comments by David Brooks and people of that order that are pretty shrewd commentators on society and culture, beginning to say the emperor has no clothes. It's not just Christians that are saying that. So we're a long way from turning the corner on it, but sooner or later it's going to collapse. In fact, I would argue that that's one of the things that being older as a Christian gives you. You've seen some cycles that have burned out in a decade or 2 decades, and you've read enough history that you've seen some cycles burn out in 200 years or 300 years. It's almost enough to turn me into a postmillennialist.
Keep it coming.
There are these cycles of things that do take place, that we drift into more sin, like as in ancient Israel, but God has ways of saying, you shall go no farther, I'm pulling you out. And he's the God of all grace, and still stands and says, turn, why will you die? The Lord has no pleasure in the death of the wicked. Now, in terms of how we are to be engaged, there are some corners, some elements of society that will just shut us down. There's nothing you can do about it. And in which case, you build parallel institutions, or you make sure that's not the way you talk in the church. You try to expose this with letters to the editor or the appropriate letters. Who's really being intolerant here? That's why I've always been surprised by speaking on such topics in very secular universities, like University of Maine was one of them, for example, where the response was gratifyingly warm and probing and thoughtful. I think that there are ways of engaging in a way that winsomely says the emperor has no clothes. Let's agree to disagree and then talk civilly to find out why we disagree. And I think that the distaste for the venom is rising in the nation and provides something of an opportunity for offering a different sort of way in which you can say that something is wrong without being thought mean. And that's eminently to be desired, because that means we can get back in a lot of other conversations as well. I'm not as discouraged as you are. I think there are ways of engaging.